1979 Black Hole, one of Disney's biggest failures. In fact, the biggest live-action flop Disney ever had before The Lone Ranger. Was it that bad as everybody says? Is it a lost gem? Let's get into this black hole of a review. Directed by Gary Nelson, Black Hole is a story in the far future of 2130, and in the deep space, the USS Palomino with its crew of Captain Dan Holland, played by Robert Forster, First Officer Lieutenant Charlie Pizer, played by Joseph Bottoms, journalist Harry Booth, played by Ernest Borghini, the psychic Dr. Kate McRae, played by Yvette Mimeux, the civilian scientist Dr. Alex Duran, played by Anthony Perkins, and support robot Vincent, which means vital information necessary centralized, played by Rod McDowell. All are ready to go home to Earth after such a long mission. Yet there is something sinister in their way, for they discover not only the biggest black hole mankind has ever seen, but also the legendary USS Cygnus, a vessel supposedly lost 20 years ago, and the same vessel which housed Dr. Kate's father, and thus the Palomino's crew decide to investigate the giant vessel that remains still amidst the violent gravitational eddies of the black hole. But tragedy strikes as the crew underestimates the power of the black hole when they briefly go outside of the Cygnus anti-gravity fields, resulting in serious damage to the Palomino and thus forcing them to dock within the Cygnus. Within the giant vessel, they find that it's still inhabited by Dr. Hans Reinhardt, played by Maximilian Schell, the leader of the huge vessel's ill-fated expedition, and his right-hand robot Maximilian. What secrets are hidden within the mad genius of Dr. Reinhardt? What lies beyond the black hole? Visually, right out of the bat, two things are quite evident within this movie. First, it was a clear attempt at seizing the attention brought by Star Wars, thus making a competitor. And second, like Dr. John Hammond in Jurassic Park, Disney spared no expenses, which ironically led to the same result for similar reasons. Bizarrely, this movie's visuals have elements that are clearly a product of its time, while surrounded by downright gorgeous designs that endure to this day. Even if I'm not a specialist in the design field, I can see how the USS Cygnus can be considered a masterwork in design. It's a gigantic vessel that has at the same time an eerie bare-bones structure with outside scaffolding, making it look like a laid-down Eiffel Tower, whose interior is illuminated in golden hues, contrasting with the abyss of the black hole and the darkness of space. So it replicates perfectly the feeling of seeing an abandoned Art Deco manor in the middle of a storm, while at the same time evoking a grand but creepy design and the glory of its past. And the directing works in tandem with the designs, knowing when to flaunt them. For example, while the sequence where the crew discovers and checks the Cygnus from outside is quite long, it's also done really well to raise tension, resulting in a gorgeous but simple style. The interiors of the Cygnus don't fall behind, evoking a grand sense of ancient tech that was too big to fail, but somehow failed anyway. The control room looks like a gigantic stained glass gallery now manned by ghosts. There are large corridors of creepy faded colors showing the passage of time and much more. The movie has a broad color palette that is used quite well. Honestly, watching this movie made me feel as if many subsequent works downright ripped it off. For example, the premise and shots of Event Horizon look so eerily similar. I wonder if basically a what if we remove Disney from Black Hole has taken place. And the scenes of the crew boarding the Cygnus reminded me of Dead Space, Ishimura's entrance hall. The visual effects are also really good, downright burying the then recent A New Hope into shame. The movie starts with a CGI grid emulating the gravitational effects of a black hole, which, for the time, was insanely expensive. Holograms, laser fire, and many other effects are good, and of course the eponymous black hole is nearly hypnotic to look at. Practical effects are also superb, with camera tricks and a well-done shots learned from 2001 A Space Odyssey, emulating zero gravity with the crew, with well-hidden cables, at least for most of the time, and levers also showing really good directing. Sadly, in the middle of this visually bombastic tale of insanity and creepy sci-fi, Disney's foul need for merchandising rears its ugly head with a tonal clash that nearly breaks the movie apart, like a meteor crashing through the hole. I don't hate Vincent, and many of his effects of a robot seemingly floating alongside the crew were really good. But it's crystal clear that he was made solely to sell toys, and downright immersion shattering to see his big-eye, bubbly robot in the middle of a death ship driven by insanity. Even his color pattern clashes with everything else, and not in a good way. A lot of the designs of the robots within the Cygnus were clearly made to be goofy and as close as possible to Star Wars stormtroopers without being within lawsuit range, resulting in downright ugly designs. Maximilian is made to be the Darth Vader of this tale, and his design is at the same time evocative, but clearly dated. Of course, sadly, which comes with the course, while many of the effects were really good, this wasn't the rule, with lots of problems either from design-wise or just normal problems popping up like a sore, for example for some reason meteorites being transparent. Now, acting-wise, normally I'd tie the directing with the visuals, but for this movie I had to make an exception. As mentioned before, the directing here is quite good, with long shots, pans and centralized camera, in a style that is seemingly lost nowadays. Whenever it's time to do an action sequence, the camera will follow the coordinated crew, and when it's time to focus on someone who is worried or insane, there will be a closer shot of the face. Yet, this is a really slow movie. It's not slow enough to make me bored, not as slow as The Boy and the Heron or Star Trek the slow motion picture, but it feels as if Disney executives said, "Hey, we spent a ton of money in these settings, let's use them, focus on them." Some shots of simple long hallways take really long, and there are whole sequences that feel they were put there just for the sake of advertising a Disney park ride. Again, to the point of shattering immersion. Which is sad because there are some really good action scenes that, joined with the special effects, give a good sense of dread. And, seemingly accordingly, the acting is just good enough. It's not superb, it just does its job. Fans of old movies will recognize several actors such as Anthony Perkins, who played Norman Bates as Alec Duran, and modern viewers may recognize Robert Forster as Edgar Braid from The Breaking Bad. Yet, most of them just give competent acting. The only ones that stand out mostly are Ernest Borgnine, because he is Ernest Borgnine, and ironically the voice actors for Vincent and Bob, Roddy McDowall and Slim Pickens respectively, who give such vibrant performances. It feels like they didn't see the designs of their characters and behaved as if they were more flesh and blood than robotic. The role of a mad genius can be hard to play without making things overly hammy, but Maximilian Schnell did a good job. Could be better, but he did a good job. The action scenes, sadly, also take a cue from Disney's style of heroic cartoon friendly. The enemy robots walk as if their joints were made of cement, and many of the interactions with them are downright goofy. So when it's time to get into a battle, they just stand there and wait to be shot, not looking like a credible threat, and scoring other points against the narrative, even if there were interesting ideas behind said scenes. For example, the Cygnus blast doors opened downwards, which seemed weird till it was time for a firefight, and said doors were only open halfway, turning them into a good cover. Now, writing wise, this is normally where I'd say that everything crashes and burns, but it doesn't. The writing is simple and straightforward. This is a crew of a scientific vessel finding a relic of the past commanded by a mad genius in an even madder quest. It's honest, it's straightforward, and allows for a ton of interesting references. More experienced viewers will know from the get-go who will live, who will die, when and how, who is the villain and who is the hero, and the narrative doesn't try to hide it. Characters made mistakes based on their personalities, things escalate even if slowly, and the narrative flows well enough to reach the climax. So, being a simple narrative, it allows for a lot of different themes and ideas to be explored. And frankly, there are some quite interesting nuggets here and there. Dr. Reinhardt shows more nuance by quoting Machiavelli and trying to be a manipulative bastard when things don't go the way he wants, instead of just doubling the ham. No, he just doubles the ham when his manipulation also fails. There's also an overarching themes of humanization of robots and robotization of humans. Vincent is loyal to his crew and banters by quoting several authors, and the crew also shows loyalty to him, humanizing him, while Dr. Reinhardt's made Maximilian to be nothing but a killing machine, treating it as such. And, of course, this movie is chock full of biblical themes and points taken from Dante's Inferno, where Dr. Reinhardt's style of science without ethics and regard for human life, and his interaction with Maximilian. The way both keep in use the head clothes, which are foreshadowing by a conversation within the crew at the start of the movie, in obvious contrast with the more familiar and respectful crew of the Palomino, who all wear white. Sadly, lots of these interesting kernels go nowhere and they are left underdeveloped, if not outright forgotten. In fact, the worst part of the movie is simply that there is a lot of potential that was muffled by different directions and clashing tones. For example, most scenes with Dr. Reinhardt reminded me of James Bond flicks. They have the same pacing, similar camera style and themes, and the introduction of Maximilian looked exactly like the big bad henchman being introduced to the viewers. The characterization is on par with the course. Simple and classic, with the heroic captain, the hot-headed young pilot, etc, etc. But most of the focus is given to Vincent because, again, toys. So there isn't much of an amusing banter and clash between the evil doctor and the good captain, nor time for the crew to be anything besides the usual. And there is also the fact that this movie was intended for kids, so the most gory and gruesome aspects were severely toned down. The need to make long shots to show how gorgeous and expensive the backgrounds are also sapped precious time. Like Hammond in Jurassic Park, Disney didn't understand that a wild beast of a dark plot couldn't be contained by pretty bars to sell toys, no matter how much money you spent on them. Now on the soundtrack department, as soon as the movie started and the intro music was playing, I felt it was haunting, daring, and also somewhat familiar. I stopped the movie to check who had made the score, and lo and behold, John Barry, who made nearly every single James Bond theme. It's really good, haunting, with a circular theme akin to a waltz, going slower and lower and lower as if sucking you into a black hole, which also weirdly suffers from the same tonal clash as the whole movie. The main theme is beautiful, but when it's time to get into a firefight, the theme switches to something heroic, generic, and keeps getting repeated over and over. The main theme is worth hearing though. So, in conclusion, The Black Hole is a film too slow for the Star Wars fans, too shallow for the people who enjoy brainy flicks, too merchandise driven for a space James Bond action flick, and too sure of its own success to give it a proper ending, because Disney believed they could make a whole series based on this movie. And it went nowhere besides within its own black hole. It's not as bad as I've heard people talking about it, but it's no surprise it failed. It's a good slow flick to watch with friends though. to point out styles and designs that aren't used anymore. It's not a must-watch, but I wouldn't say it should be forgotten. Well, that's all for today, and see you next time, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And now for the short spoilers. Seriously, this movie is so against itself tonally and style-wise that when it's time for Maximilian to kill Alex Duran, the robot shoves a spinning blade arm up to Duran's torso and there isn't a single drop of blood. Maximilian could have just blasted the guy or choked him, but no, the directing went with a gruesome death without a droplet of blood. The asteroids spelt in the signal sequence, while absolutely beautiful, come out of nowhere and for no reason. But the scene of the crew running from a giant rolling ball is astonishing to look at still nowadays. The Palomino crashing into the signals could have done enough damage by itself. And the whole ending sequence is beautiful, creepy, and somewhat nonsensical. It gets a bit on the nose with the good people go to heaven and the bad people go to hell thing, but I overall enjoy it, with the evil doctor trapped inside his creation.